Hey everybody, I am actually sitting at my desk at work and I wanted to start a video with explaining kind of what I want to do over the next several months. Hopefully it keeps going. What I noticed is that there's not a lot of videos and YouTube channels of people who do Masters Track. I've seen some video of interviews and a few things here and there. So I wanted to go ahead and start my own journey as a Masters Track athlete. So I thought a good way to do that would be to just start. Got to start somewhere. So bear with me as I'm still kind of getting my bearings in this. I'm 41 years old, so I will be 42 in February. So I am officially a Masters Track athlete. The interesting thing is, though, I have not always wanted to be a Masters Track athlete or be in this position, because I actually didn't even know this really existed until last year. So my journey has been very interesting, and I think just having a little bit of a background of that, I think, will help with this whole process. So I was a track and field athlete in high school, and I actually had the long jump record at our local high school here at Whitefish High School, and it was great. I loved track. Like, I lived for track. So I also played basketball and did volleyball, but I mainly did track. I lived for the track season. So even in the summer times, like, I would be doing workouts just to, stay focused. But at that time, I mean, I'm almost 42. At that time, there wasn't really like club teams. There wasn't a way to do indoor track, at least that I had access to. I didn't really have the ability to go to some of these indoor track meets like I can do with my son now. And so it was just like the season of spring. Spring was track season. So the cool thing is I did get a track scholarship to Montana State in Bozeman. However, that was kind of short-lived because I was from small town Montana, and going to college, and it was a Division I college track team, and I was a little fish in a really big pond, and it was really difficult for me. So the first semester was actually kind of fine. I was a really strong athlete, so I probably gained about 15 pounds, and it was because we had hit the gym and hit the weights, and I had access to food, but I was very comfortable. It was never a problem. One of the things that happened during my high school career was my junior year, I actually had a broken bone in my foot that I had to have surgery on right before the state track meet. So that was a little hard for me, but I was still having pain. Like, I was not running properly. So when I got to Bozeman, when I got to the track team, one of the things we were working on was form and making sure that my feet didn't hurt anymore. And one of the things that happened with that is my coach at the time said, if you lost a little bit of weight, it would actually help. And I didn't realize how devastating that comment would be, because that drastically changed my life. So I went home for Thanksgiving break, and I had found out that if I could throw up my dessert, then I could still eat the dessert, but I wouldn't have the calories involved. And so something changed over a couple of weeks, and my coach said, "Hey, you actually look great. How are you feeling?" Well, I had felt great. Like, it could have been I lost a pound or two. I don't even know. I didn't even have a scale. But he said I looked great and I started feeling good, so I just kind of went with it. And it became a quick downward spiral. So with that, indoor season comes and I'm competing okay. One of the things that happened is as I started losing weight, I started not to be as strong. So my jumping was a struggle, and then hurdles were a struggle. I was a heptathlete, and those are kind of some major events within that event. So, going into the indoor season, the strongest event that I had was the 800. But that's not, you can't win the heptathlon with just the 800. So going into outdoor season, I had even started to lose even more weight, and it was a very, very bad thing. I basically went to these 2-day meets because the heptathlon was 2 days. Indoor, we did less events, but by the time I got to that outdoor season, it was 2 days, and I would binge the night before the events, and then I would purge, and I would take tons of laxatives to try to get every single thing out of my body. I was dehydrated, super just emptied out, and just tried to be as light as possible. I would then compete the next day. We would go to team dinner, and I would have team dinner. I would eat all of that. I would eat a lot of that, and I would even hide food and take it back, and then I would do the whole cycle again, and I would do that for 2 to 3 days, because even sometimes the team would come on the third day, and I would do some individual events on the third day. So it was a 3-day thing where I really wouldn't keep much food down. So that first outdoor season was really hard, and but I competed okay. Like I was really good at the 800. The 800 was strong for me, and I loved it. I actually really loved the 800. But then that summer came, and I started losing a lot of weight because I got a job. I was actually doing a little bit of construction, and I would ride my bike to and from work, and I would rarely drive. So I lost weight in that aspect. But then at that point, my whole team knew, my coach knew, like everybody knew that Maria had this problem, and it was really uncomfortable. So I ended up leaving and living with a boyfriend at the time. I went down to Wyoming and stayed down there for a month, and I had a friend that lived down there too. So I was like, I'm just gonna move to Wyoming. Well, that didn't work, and I broke up with him and whatever, and it was fine. And I came back to Bozeman to start the fall semester, which ultimately was a really good thing. But then I start school, go back to practice, and I just felt so like singled out in the whole process that it was just a really uncomfortable thing for me. So then I went to my coach. I had lost so much weight. A year prior, I was like 35 pounds heavier, and so I had lost a ton of weight. And I just asked him, I said, I'm obviously not doing what you want, but I do like to do the 800. I was good at javelin, and maybe I can just focus on, the long jump or something just to, kind of take my events down. Because when you're training for the heptathlon, you're in the gym, you're learning. Like, I had never done high jump until college, so I had to learn how to high jump, and then I'm doing long jump, and I'm doing hurdles, and I think it was roughly 4 or 5 hours each day working, on individual events and stuff. And so I just asked him, I said, hey, can I just cut back? And he told me no. So a week later, I went back to his office, and I said, I'm quitting. And in that time, my mom had asked me, she said, can you please at least finish finals? So I did. I finished finals, I quit college track, and I came home. I lived with my mom and dad again for just about a month or so, I got a job back home and got my own apartment, and I was on a better track. So the better track in a sense that I had to get out of that environment. I was still very stuck in my eating disorder. The really cool thing though is, kind of a little bit of a fast forward-ish. When I dropped out of school, I met my now husband, and we have two amazing kids. And I used to think, like, what if? But now, like, I've been almost married 20 years, and I don't know if that would have happened. And so, when I talk about, what college did to me, like, there was some good out of it, and I just hope that through my story, somebody else can have some good out of it as well. So, I met my husband, and we dated. I met him, and then we were not dating for a while, but we became good friends, and then we started dating like a year later, and then we had my son a couple years later. Like, it just, that portion, just meeting my husband was great. So that was something that came out of this. And then also, I was still very bulimic, and I did come to know Jesus. So that was a really cool thing too. Just, that part of my life, and getting to know Jesus, having those Christian friends, and going to church, and having that be a part of my life. I did a lot of healing, some inner healing, doing a lot of prayer, and just trying to get rid of this problem that I had, get rid of this disease. And so the turning point was actually when I did get pregnant with my son, and I actually sometimes call him my savior baby, because he's 18, he's almost 19 now, and getting pregnant with him changed my life, because at that moment I was very scared, but I was very bulimic. It changed me, and I had, I think, a couple more like bulimic spells after finding out I was pregnant with him. But then there was this moment, and it was a very pivotal moment. I was at work, and I had binged a bunch, but I literally could not throw up. There was nothing I could do. Like, I could not make myself throw up. I mean, I have scars on my hands, like, for shoving my hand down my throat, and I could not do it. And it was, at that moment, it was, okay, I have somebody else inside me that I'm taking care of. Like, this is not just about me anymore. Like, this is about my son that is growing inside me. And so that was the last time that I had, that I was bulimic. And there's been a few, definitely some weakness moments where I would overeat, but it was definitely like night and day, like done. And still the mental struggle was there, but the physical act wasn't there. So I still had a lot of healing to do. So that is a little bit of a background up until my son was born. But then fast forward a little bit, I had a lot of health things happen from that moment, or from that point. And looking back now, we believe that I now have autoimmune stuff, but those moments and some of the drugs I took, like I took different pills at the gas station to help that had caffeine in them, like I didn't know anything. I was just trying to get energy, and I used lots of laxatives, and then my feet were in pain. So I was, there was moments I would take, 12 to 15 ibuprofen, not good for your body. And so after I had Jack, there was a lot of up and downs with some health stuff that we couldn't quite explain. There was a time I went to a doctor, and they were like, oh, you have mono. And so I was like, okay, well then years later I find out that like once you have mono, the virus is in your body and you can literally test positive for mono forever. So that was interesting. I was like, great. They told me that, and just so they could check a box. There was also a time when, my joints were hurting, my body was really hurting, and we couldn't figure out what was going on. And the doctor's like, oh, you should stop running. You should really stick to yoga, some easier stuff on your body. So going through that was really difficult for me mentally, because I wasn't a competitive runner at the time, but I like to work out. Like, I've always been physically active. And so having that kind of conversation with the doctor was really tough. So then, life is fine, going through. I homeschooled my kids. My husband worked a lot. He's a mechanic. And then I decided to finish school because, dropping out of school and losing your scholarship really sucks. So then I was like, well, I want to go back to school. So I started going back to school, and I ended up getting my degree, which was great. I got a bachelor's in business management and marketing. I didn't really know what I was going to do with that. My grandma actually was, right before she passed away, this is my mom's mom, she said something to me that kind of launched the next part of my life, where she had said something about like there's a lot of things she wishes she would have done that she just never did. And after she passed away, I was thinking about that more. And then that spring, I ended up launching my own marketing company, because I had always thought, the reason I went into business management and marketing is because I want to own a business someday. But I was sitting there not owning a business. So I started my own marketing company, totally ground up. I just had this idea of helping small businesses. And it was fun. It was hard. It was a really good way to meet people. And I don't do that anymore, but starting that marketing company actually helped me meet my now business partner with Black Diamond Mortgage, which a whole nother thing, but that was kind of cool just, to go through that process. But in that, again, like all this time I have not felt good. And there was moments where like I had to have wrist surgery a couple of times. I had a wrist infection. I had broken my wrist in high school, and then that surgery didn't quite work. So I had another surgery after my son was born that got infected. And then I was in the hospital for 3 days. And then I had a bug bite that actually went systemically throughout my whole body. And that was a super weird thing. The doctor's like, you just have eczema. And I'm like, how can that be? But anyways, like that was just very interesting. And so, having my own marketing company and then homeschooling my kids was a challenge. So I was staying up late. My husband was waking up early. And so like our schedules didn't work. And, going to networking events, like I was just doing all these things to try to like make things better for our family, but it was definitely not the best thing. And then with that, I did, going to networking events, like all they do is drink and hand out business cards. So I did start drinking, but drinking wasn't really a problem until I had kind of switched from marketing, and then I got this job at Black Diamond Mortgage as operations, which was a really amazing thing. So now I'm in operations, and I didn't have to go to as many networking events. So that was great. That was kind of a breath of fresh air, because I was just kind of getting burned out by that. But then in 2018, so I started at Black Diamond in 2015, and it total life changing. That's been just so great. But in 2018, I had a major autoimmune flare. Like, we did not know what was going on. I woke up one day and I'd always like done my nails, and I'd always like been able to put my makeup on like just fine. But this one day I was getting ready to go to a princess ball actually with my daughter, and I went to go put on mascara, and my hand was literally shaking. And I was like kind of freaking out, like, well, this is weird. Well, then it just was downhill. Like for the next couple of weeks, like I would have pain all over the right side of my body. My digestion shut down. Like so many things were happening. And so I went to the doctor. I had nerve conduction tests. I had like MRI, CT scans, like everything. They thought I had MS for a little while, but that was not the case. And it was roughly 6 months of feeling like shit and nobody being able to help me. And so yeah, that was really, really difficult going through that time and not knowing exactly what was going on, and just I tried everything. I went to all these different doctors, and then finally I ran into my dad's rheumatologist, and my dad's rheumatologist was able to help me figure that out, and he diagnosed me with Sjogren's syndrome, which was a little shocking, but then I started reading through the details, and Sjogren's syndrome affects your mucus and saliva producing glands. So for some people, it can just cause dry eyes and dry mouth. Other people, it can cause like major systemic issues like nerve damage and intestinal issues, and just all sorts of stuff if you read on it. And so once I knew what I had and I got onto a treatment, so that was in late September of 2018. I started to, because in that time when I was in so much pain, I actually drank a lot. Like that year, 2018, I drank a lot. There was a lot of nerve pain, and that's how I would help myself fall asleep. It was pretty bad. And then once I kind of got on the track and I knew what was going on, in 2019, I was able to compete in my first race in a really long time. I ended up doing this thing called the Glacier Challenge. It had like 7 different events, and kayaks, not swimming, but it was in the water, kayak boating. So there's some boating, road bike, mountain bike and stuff. Well, I did the road bike portion and the 5K, and it was an accomplishment. We did it and it was great. But then it just kind of started a little bit of my journey. I was like, well, running is still really difficult. And I kept thinking that one doctor that told me that I shouldn't be running, it was just stuck in my head. And I was like, well, it is painful to run. Like Sjogren's syndrome was affecting a lot of my life. And so I started riding a bike. So I bought a road bike, and that summer in 2019, I did an 83-mile bike ride around Lake Koocanusa, which was really, really difficult. But my family was there, and that was really cool. And I just remember the last 10 miles, my husband like pops up around the corner. Totally unexpected, but I was at a point where I was like, oh my gosh, can I make it any farther? And he just was cheering me on, and it was just really exciting to see him and to know that I only had 10 miles left. So that was a huge accomplishment. And then that opened the door, because one of my friends said, you know, if you want to keep riding your bike, the problem is there's not a lot of bike races, but you could do triathlon. So I decided to get into triathlon. I have never swam really in my life. I've frolicked in the lake, and I can make myself make it across the lake, and I cannot drown, but I've never learned to swim. So I learned to swim at the beginning of 2020, I took my first swim lessons. I committed to learning how to swim, and I learned how to swim, and I did my first triathlon in 2020, which was actually the only triathlon in the state of Montana because of 2020. I'm just gonna leave it there. So I did my first triathlon, but then that next year it built up to doing more 5Ks, 10Ks, and then I did a couple more triathlons, and I was able to build up my running and, still keeping pretty low mileage, but, being able to add the swim and the bike as a cross training method was really good for my body. In that time, though, I did also learn that I was celiac and I was sensitive to a lot of food, so I had to make some changes there. So that's how I got it started into triathlon. I have not really done triathlon my whole life, but that was a really fun season because it really opened me up to, what my body could do, what I could get my body to do, and so that was fun. My family's been super supportive with that. We even, they went to Coeur d'Alene with me for my first half Ironman, which I was able to qualify for the World Championships in St. George. So my husband and I and my parents came down too for that. So we went to St. George in 2022, which was really fun. And then the challenge of okay, what do I do next? Well, I had never run a marathon, and for some reason, everybody thought, since I had been doing triathlon, everybody literally thought that I had run a marathon. And I was like, shoot, I have not run a marathon. So that was kind of the next challenge. And so actually, and to just back up a little bit, at the beginning of 22, I ended up becoming half owner of Black Diamond Mortgage. So that was a huge thing. So just having learning triathlon and then doing all the training for triathlon and then becoming half owner was really fun and challenging. And so I've been half owner now since 2022. And now I get through my half Ironman and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna try to do a marathon. So then I did a few more half marathons and stuff, but I had decided to run one more half marathon in May of 23. And then after that, I decided I'm going to go ahead or it might have been June, but anyways, I was like, I'm going to go ahead and build up for a marathon. So I ran my first marathon in September of 23. Not super, it was fine. It was, the thought was maybe to Boston qualify. I was only 7 minutes off. So I was like, well, I'm going to train again. So I decided to do a pretty solid base training phase and then build up to then doing a full marathon the next June. And so training was great. I was killing all my workouts. And I was doing a little bit of training with the track kids because I was coaching high school track at this point. And which, just so you know, dropping out of track was really hard. And then getting the confidence to coach track took me 20 years. So that was a big mental thing because I love track and field, but it took me 20 years to come back to track. So I started coaching track also. So yeah, that was kind of interesting, the mental piece about that. So I don't know if anybody can relate to that. But then, okay, so I'm getting ready to run my second marathon, and that second marathon, everything was fine up until 3 weeks before the race. And then I was watching my daughter win an award, and my whole hips seized up. I sat in the bleachers for about an hour, and it killed my hips. And I couldn't run for 3 weeks. So then I start running that marathon, and I was actually fine up until mile 20 or so. And if you've run a marathon, you'll know what this feels like. But then the last 4 miles or so was literally a walk jog. There was a point where I had my headphones in and I ended up calling my husband, and I was like, this is really hard. Like, I am struggling big time. And he like texted everybody, and I'm getting all these like voice texts from people like encouraging me and stuff. And even one of them was like, oh, I hope you qualify for Boston. At that moment, I was like, I don't want to qualify for Boston because I don't want to run this race ever again. So it was a really hard mental struggle. So I got through it, I finished, and it was fine. I still, like, to my name, I have 2 marathons under 4 hours, so that was cool. But I am not motivated to run another marathon. So I'm sitting there, after that race in June, and this is June 2024 at this point, and I was like, I know I want to keep competing, but why does this suck so bad? Like, what am I supposed to do? I thought that if I keep going farther distances that, that's what you do. Well, when it was earlier in the spring, one of my kind of more of a racing friend, somebody that I've seen race some half marathons and stuff, I saw her post that she had raced a mile at one of the college track meets. Well, she's like 38. I was like, oh, you can do that? I didn't know you could do that. So it kind of sparked my interest, and then it made me think about it a little bit. And then I had been a part of this Facebook group that is all about Masters Track. And I was like, well, and I don't even know how I got like introduced to the Masters Track, because I didn't even really know Masters Track was a thing. But I would get different posts populate and stuff, and so it sparked my interest. And then I started seeing this gal, Sue McDonald, and some of the stuff that she had been accomplishing. I was like, wow, she's 61 and she is doing she's like who I want to be when I grow up. And I'm just seeing her run all these races, and she's still doing hurdles and all that stuff. And so I reached out to her, and we connected, and I don't know what it was, but there was, I think in my heart and in my mind, I was like, wow, I think that this is something that I would really, really like, because I had been coaching track. I helped with the junior high 2 years prior, and then I helped with the high school. Like, I love track. Like, I would love going to practice. Like, I loved talking to the kids. I loved watching them compete. I loved watching them grow. And I just it brought this feeling in me that was just this is what I had when I was in high school. I loved that feeling. I lived for track. And it was really cool to just talk with Sue, and then to listen to some of her podcasts, and then follow some of the other people. I mean, I've been watching track meets for a long time now, and just seeing some of that, and then realizing that I could actually do it too. So then I started doing a little bit of research of well, where could I compete? And so that's been a whole nother thing. But yeah, it was really encouraging. So then after that conversation with Sue, we were actually just communicating digitally at that point. And I said, I did commit to a half marathon that I need to go ahead and do. But then, in October, I want to go ahead and let's see if this is a thing. So we had a virtual call in September, and then we got started in October, and it has been amazing, because for one, I feel like I'm not just grinding. I think when you're doing marathon training or half marathon training or just training, like sometimes you can get into the mode where you feel like you're just grinding. That can be hard. You're like, what is the actual goal for this? And also, can I continue to do this? Because marathon training and all that, like, it's a lot of pounding on your body. And I wanted to feel good. And I've always liked to go fast. Like, that is the one thing that, like, when I would train for the marathon, like, I would do solid half-mile repeats and mile. Like, I hated doing mile repeats, but I would want to go fast, and I'd go way too fast. Like, so, like, track is always, it's like always there, but I would have to like figure out my pacing and all that stuff. But once I started training in October, I don't know, it's been amazing. It's been a struggle because my body doesn't have the mobility as I want it to. It's absolutely better, because at the beginning of October, I remember Sue had me do these, she just called them fresh runs, and I would do them at the end of a 5-mile run, and I had no mobility. My hamstrings would not do anything, and I just like literally was like, this sucks. Like, how am I going to be able to run an 800 or a mile? Like, what the heck? And also Sue had me do a few time trials, and I did them, and I got pretty good times, but oh my gosh, like, I did not know how to pace them at all. I sucked so bad. Like, so it was just kind of a wake-up call of like, wow, I am venturing into something that is so different, and I have no idea what I'm doing. And my husband was very supportive of me getting a coach. So I love that I have a coach, because she does hold me accountable. And, but so I did 2 months. So in that time in October, I found a track meet that was just about 4.5, 5 hours away from my house. So I was like, okay, Sue, I found a track meet, and the way the schedule is, you know, I could run the 800 and the mile. Now, remind you, the farthest I've ever really raced on the track is an 800. Like, I never raced a mile. So here I am saying, okay, I'm going to race an 800, and then a few hours later, because of the way the schedule is, I'm going to race a mile. Whoa, what the heck? Like, that sounds crazy. So then December 15th comes, my whole family goes down there. My son's actually able to compete too. He's a senior this year, so he's doing some track stuff, because he's going to actually go to college for track. And we get ready, and I was so nervous. Like, I feel that basically I have all these like emotions, first of all, because I have not ran on an indoor track in 22 years. So then I am stepping onto the track, and it was great. There was only 3 people in our heat. One gal is a former Division I college athlete. She's the same age as me. And then the other gal, I think, is a little bit younger, but it was her first race. So it was a really good group, and it was small. So it was like, okay, we can handle this. This is fine. And then the freaking fire alarm went off. The guy's like, okay, I'm going to start you right at noon so we can make sure we're, you know, because we were literally the first race of the whole event. Fire alarm goes off. Oh my gosh. So I'm like, well, guess I'll go to the bathroom, like, whatever there. So I like walk out and go to attempt to maybe go to the bathroom. And then it was actually kind of a ways. And then the alarm stops, and I'm like, oh, I better hurry up. So I didn't go to the bathroom. So I kind of jogged back to the starting line. And so we were able to start. But I will tell you, I was very nervous. I get to the starting line, and then there was something in me, like, as soon as that gun went off, I was in my happy place. Like, I don't even know what to call it. Like, it felt so good. It felt so normal. It felt so natural. I got into my stride. I executed a great race. I ended up winning, which was great. Ran a really good time. I mean, I had done a time trial at like a 2:43, which, excuse me, which was great, but it was totally like way too fast, slowed down, and then I was able to kind of keep up at the end for a kick. But I executed that race exactly how Sue and I had hoped and how I had trained, and it was awesome. I just, being on that track felt so good. So then I had about 4.5, 5 hours before the mile. And again, I've never raced a mile, so I didn't really know what to expect. And but that race, I recovered great. So that was a shock. I was very nervous that I wouldn't recover well because I had never done that. I'd never had 2 races like that. And so I felt like that race was executed well. I had great splits. I didn't start too fast, and which has always been a problem in every single race I've done. So it was nice to not have that. I'm getting over a cold right now, but so like having those 2 races, I got second in the mile. I ran a 5:46. When I had time trialed, I was like a 5:54, I think. So both those races were, 7 to 10 seconds faster than my time trial time, which was great, and executed really well. So that is technically the way I got into Masters Track. So there's a lot more to it, and I'm hoping that I can kind of break up some things a little bit, but and do like other videos, maybe dive into a few more things. But that's kind of the start of it. If you were able to listen this whole time, I do have another track meet. Well, I'm going this weekend with my son. He's competing. I'm not competing. But then next week, in a week, I'm going to be competing in Seattle for the mile. So that'll be fun. It's just strictly a mile race. And then I'm hoping to race at the end of January. And then there's nationals. I'm going to go ahead and go to Florida for nationals. I'm going to be able to meet Sue. I'm super excited about that. And then I'll be going to the World Championships in Florida as well in March. So that'll be super fun. I'm still kind of exploring the different meets that I can go to and figure out what works with my family. Once track season starts for my son, I'm going to be coaching as well. I really don't think I'm going to be able to do any track meets, but we'll see. It just depends on schedules and where they are. But then hopefully in the summertime I can do some more. But I want to kind of, I guess, wrap this up, but that is kind of my journey on how I got to this point. And I'm hoping to be able to, for one, encourage other people to kind of step out of their comfort zone. I mean, there was a lot of anxiety to jump on the track again, but it was so awesome. I just can't wait to do it again. So yeah, I want to encourage people to step out of their comfort zone. I want to, help people who've had eating disorders, who may know somebody who has had an eating disorder, who has dealt with their own problems or their kids or something. Like, there is light at the end of the tunnel. Everybody's healing is a little differently. Again, I was able to quit my bulimia cold turkey. I was able to quit alcohol cold turkey. I didn't really go into that. I probably will at some other point. But that was a cold turkey situation. And so yeah, I just want to encourage people. And then, yeah, I hope you stay around and listen to what it's like to be a Masters track athlete. I think there needs to be more people sharing, and we're a different breed. Like, I mentally want to do more than my body wants to. Like, I do need more recovery. I have a lot of dietary restrictions, so I have to be cognizant of that. I actually, right before that track meet in December, I made a big diet change, and it's been really good, but I had kind of done another kind of diet, and I don't say diet, it's just the way I was fueling. I had made a change for a whole year, but I had slowly started to not feel good again, which didn't quite make sense. So then I made a change right before that track meet, and it was a little scary because I was like, am I gonna have the energy? Is this gonna work okay? It worked fine. So I'll dive into that at another time, but just like sharing that kind of information, injury prevention. I've had different injuries from running. And so just trying, to share that journey. And so that's my hope in all of this. So my story of how I got here, and then hopefully my journey on the rest of these track meets. And I really hope that this resonates with somebody. And yeah, I'm excited to share my story. What I really like about Masters Track is that I can continue to do it for a really, really long time. When I look at Sue and she's 61 and I look at what she's accomplishing, I'm like, I don't know if I can do what she can do. Like maybe I can break her records, when I'm 61, I don't know. But it gives me encouragement that, like, as a very active person and who's very motivated, like, there's stuff I can do with track literally for the rest of my life. Like, that is very exciting. So I want to share that journey. And so, yeah, I'm hoping this is the start, and I appreciate you guys for listening, whoever listens. Masters Track so far, I love it. There's definitely times where, I'm probably not going to want to share, but I actually wanted to start this video or start this whole thing like a week ago, and then I got sick. I was like, oh, this weekend I'm going to whatever. I got sick, so that didn't happen. So things are going to happen, and I don't know how well I'm going to do, but I'm going to try and share some information to hopefully spread the joy of Masters Track. So anyways, thanks for listening, and hope to see you on the track.